Hello everyone. In today's video, let us learn how to demonstrate different flip-flops by the number printed on them. At the end of this video, you will be able to demonstrate different flip-flop by the number printed on the ICs. Let us collect the tools, equipment and materials required to do this practical. IC74LS73, IC74LS74, IC74LS76, IC74LS107, IC74LS109. Let us discuss on active, low and high input pin details. An active low input can be identified from the pin details of the corresponding data sheets. A bar over the signal name or like a line over the signal often indicates an active low signal. Usually low level is 0 as represented here. An active high input can be identified from the pin details of the corresponding data sheets, whereas there is no bar over the signal name. Usually high level is 1 as represented here. Let us discuss about the IC74LS73. The 74LS73 is a dual JK flip-flop IC that belongs to the 74LS family, which is composed of two individual JK flip-flops, each with independent J and K inputs. It consists of two independent negative edge-triggered clock inputs, and this IC is designed for sequential logic applications and is widely used in digital electronic circuits. The 74LS73 IC typically comes in a 14-pin dual in-line package, DIP. Here you could see the simple representation of IC74LS73. Pin 1, clock input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 2, clear input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 3, input of flip-flop 1 K1. Pin 4, power supply plus 5V VCC. Pin 5, clock input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 6, clear input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 7, input of flip-flop 2 J2. Pin 8, complementary output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 9, output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 10, input of flip-flop 2 K2. Pin 11, connected to ground GND. Pin 12, output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 13, complementary output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 14, input of flip-flop 1 J1. Here you can see the logic connection diagram of the IC74LS73. Let us discuss about the IC74LS74. The 74LS74 is a dual D-type positive edge triggered flip-flops IC. The 74LS74 device contains two independent positive edge triggered D flip-flops with outputs. The 74LS74 IC typically comes in a 14-pin dual in-line package. Here you could see the simple representation of IC74LS74. Pin 1, data clear input of flip-flop 1 D1. Pin 2, data input of flip-flop 1 D1. Pin 3, clock input of flip-flop 1 D1. Pin 4, preset input of flip-flop 1 D1. Pin 5, output of flip-flop 1 D1. Pin 6, complementary output of flip-flop 1 D1. Pin 7, connected to ground. Pin 8, complementary output of flip-flop 2 D2. Pin 9, output of flip-flop 2 D2. Pin 10, preset input of flip-flop 2 D2. Pin 11, clock input pin of flip-flop 2 D2. Pin 12, data input pin of flip-flop 2 D2. Pin 13, data clear input pin of flip-flop 2 D2. Pin 14, power supply plus 5V VCC. Here you can see the simple representation and logic diagram of the IC74LS74. The part number is usually printed on the top of the IC package. It may be a combination of letters and numbers, and it often includes the series name. Let us discuss about the IC74LS76. The 74LS76 is a dual in-line JK flip-flop 16-pin IC, meaning it has two JK flip-flops inside with negative edge-triggered clock input, and each JK flip-flop can be used individually based on our application. The JK flip-flops are the most efficient flip-flops and can be used for certain applications on their own. Pin details of IC74LS76. Pin 1, clock input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 2, preset input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 3, data clear input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 4, input of flip-flop 1 J1. Pin 5, power supply plus 5V VCC. Pin 6, clock input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 7, preset input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 8, data clear input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 9, input of flip-flop 2 J2. Pin 10, complementary output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 11, output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 12, input of flip-flop 2 K2. Pin 13, connected to ground. Pin 14, complementary output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 15, output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 16, input of flip-flop 1 K1. Here you can see the simple representation and logic diagram of the IC74LS76. The part number is usually printed on the top of the IC package. It may be a combination of letters and numbers, and it often includes the series name. Let us discuss about the IC74LS107. The 74LS107 is a JK flip-flop with individual JK direct clear and negative edge clock pulse inputs. The 74LS107 dual JK flip-flop has a total of 14 pins, which include input for 2 independent JK flip-flops, clock input for both flip-flops, outputs for both flip-flops, and complementary outputs for both flip-flops. Pin details of IC74LS107. Pin 1, input of flip-flop 1 J1. Pin 2, complementary output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 3, output of the flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 4, input of flip-flop 1 K1. Pin 5, output of the flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 6, complementary output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 7, connected to the ground. Pin 8, input of flip-flop 2 J2. Pin 9, clock pulse input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 10, reset or clear input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 11, input of flip-flop 2 K2. Pin 12, clock pulse input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 13, reset or clear input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 14, power supply plus 5V VCC. Here you can see the simple representation and logic diagram of IC74LS107. The part number is usually printed on the top of the IC package. It may be a combination of letters and numbers, and it often includes a series name. Let us discuss about the IC74LS109. The 74LS109 is a 16-pin IC consists of 2 independent JK positive edge-triggered flip-flops. The 74LS109 is characterized for operation from 0 degrees Celsius to 70 degrees Celsius. The feature of 74LS109 is a package. Pin 1, clear input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 2, input of flip-flop 1 J1. Pin 3, input of flip-flop 1 K1. Pin 4, clock input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 5, reset input of flip-flop 1 JK1. Pin 6, output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 7, complementary output of flip-flop 1 Q1. Pin 8, connected to ground. Pin 9, complement output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 10, output of flip-flop 2 Q2. Pin 11, reset input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 12, clock input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 13, input of flip-flop 2 K2. Pin 14, input of flip-flop 2 J2. Pin 15, clear input of flip-flop 2 JK2. Pin 16, power supply plus 5V VCC. Here you can see the simple representation and logic diagram of IC74LS109. The part number is usually printed on the top of the IC package. It may be a combination of letters and numbers, and it often includes the series name. Hope now you will be able to demonstrate different flip-flops by the number printed on the ICs. This concludes the session on how to demonstrate different flip-flops based on the number printed on the ICs. Thank you.